My Uncle Silas at one time knew two gentlemen named Foghorn Freeman and Narra Quincy, and between them, literally and otherwise, they set the town on fire. Foghorn Freeman was a man with a voice that seemed to come booming and hoarse out of a cave. He wore crisp, sandy military moustaches of splendid outcurving design, and had lately returned, it was then some time in the early 90s, from service in India. I think the northwest provinces, where women were 2 for an anna, and life generally not much more expensive, and where little things like setting towns on fire were, it seemed, all in the day's work of a soldier, the Queen. "I'll cigar it," Foghorn used to roar. "Catch 'em with their handbags down." Quincy was what my Uncle Silas called a narrow-gutted man. They were the days when men went off into fits of the blues for 3 weeks on end, fighting the devil in the shape of street lamp-posts, and then rushing about the town screaming, "Don't let 'em get me! They're after me! Don't let 'em get me!" My Uncle Silas and Foghorn and Narra also rushed about the town, drunk as newts, tying tin cans to cats' tails, fighting all comers, wrecking pubs, putting chamber pots on steeples, roaring hell and damnation, and engaging in other harmless pursuits, like letting the fire horses out at midnight. "Always ready for a bit of fun," my Uncle Silas said, when they rolled 3 lighted tar barrels into the middle of the mayor's parade on the Sunday of the 50 feasts. "Loved a bit of fun. Like to enjoy ourselves. Want a man who could stop us either." It was about this time that the parson died, an oldish, long-winded preacher, not necessarily killed, but then again not helped by opening the Bible class lecture on a quiet Sunday afternoon and seeing 6 demented ducks fly out to the tune of "Art thou weary? Art thou languid? Art thou sore distressed?" In his place came a young man, fresh from Oxford, I think, earnest and high-minded, and rather short-sighted, and with, as my Uncle Silas said, the mouth of a proper fly-catcher. My Uncle Silas had not much use for parsons. They roused the Saxon in him, or something else of that primitive, simple, earthy nature, with a parallel hatred of mealy, fly-catching mouths. Surplices and vestments inflamed him like red rags. Chanters and psalm-singers and Bible-thumpers, of which the countryside was all too full, turned him into a healthy fire-eater on the devil's side. "Umbuggin popery," he used to rage darkly. "Umbuggin money-making game." In the course of a few weeks the young parson began to speak darkly too. There were, he said from the pulpit, evil forces abroad. The devil's forces and the devil's voices and the devil's hands were at work in the town, and everywhere the devil stalked, unleashed and unafraid. After my Uncle Silas and Foghorn and Narra had let the fire horses out again, and rung the bead house bell at midnight, and tied a chamber pot on the weathercock, he preached with pain and sorrow of the black trident that is pointed at the heart of this little town. "We were the trident he meant," Silas said. "Me and old Foghorn and narrow-gutted Quincy." All this time the new young parson was to be seen flying open-mouthed across the small town square, under the chestnut trees, in vivid vestments that changed with flashing bewilderment from day to day, and even from morning till afternoon, according to the demands of the high ecclesiastical calendar. Stoles of gold and purple, glimpses of scarlet silk under long white surplices, beads and crosses. Rome, my Uncle Silas considered, had wormed its evil way into town. "Even had a hat on," my Uncle Silas said, as if that, above all, were the crown of popishness. "A black un. Looked like a cross between a saucepan and what we tied atop the bead house weathercock." "Here's the old gal with his handbags on," Foghorn would shout across the square. "Treacle trousers." Some time after this, Silas had the misfortune, as he came out of the griffin, bloodshot eye gleaming, red lips wickedly wet, and a certain absence of steering noticeable in his thick bow legs, to run into the flying figure of purple and gold and scarlet, complete with canonical chamber pot, as it flashed across the square. "Ah, Silas, I've been wanting for some time to buttonhole you."
"Here's me buttonhole," Silas said. "Now you get hold on it good and proper, while you got the chance."
I did not quite mean it like that. It was a sort of figure of speech.
"Well then," Silas said, "you just stop figuring and speeching and get on with your Umbuggin fancy work. Like go and have a wet at the Dragon."
"I think it's all too obvious you've had a wet already."
"Just wash me mouth out with a drop," Silas said. "I don't deny that."
He blew with magnificent and snotty indifference into his large red handkerchief, and the young man said, "You are a menace to the town. You and Freeman and that Quincy fellow. People are going in terror. They dare not go out at nights."
"Dear, oh dear."
"I will not tolerate it. It has got beyond all limits. Never the one of you is ever seen in church, in God's house, behaving in a godly fashion. You take us back to the days of bear-baiting and cock-throwing and hooliganism of that kind."
"Dear, oh dear."
"You'd never lift a finger to show regret or mitigation. You glory in it. That's the worst of all."
"Oh yes, sir."
Silas had a way sometimes of lowering his eyes, of drawing half over them a pair of butter-smooth lids as meek and bland as a child's.
"If that's the way it is, I'm very sorry, sir. What would you like us to do?"
"I should not take it all amiss if you came to church once in a while."
"Very well then, sir," Silas said. "I ain't much of a church-going man, nor yet ain't far gone on Quincy. But if we can get over there once in a while, we will."
"I appreciate that," the young man said. "I truly appreciate it. It only remains to be seen."
"Yes, sir," Silas said. "It just remains to be seen."
The following Sunday there were Foghorn and Quincy and my Uncle Silas sitting in the front pew at church like a row of innocent owls.
"You never seen such Umbuggin palaver in all your damned days," my Uncle Silas said. "A burning this and a waving that and a warting summat else. I never seen such Umbuggin going on in me life. Wasn't Sanger certus." "Might think we were latter bees," Quincy said, "a been smoked out of a hive."
During the sermon, Quincy, Foghorn, and Silas sat listening as if they were made of butter, and wondering all the time how soon they could escape, and, as Silas said,
"Nip over to the Dragon and get the taint of it out of our mouths."
My Uncle Silas had never dreamed of such popery. The Puritan in him was inflamed as if by heresies.
"Thought they were never going to be done of signcing around in nightshirts," he said, "and cock-eyed hats, and I don't know what. Never seen such bowing and scraping and groaning and farting about in all me days."
But after the sermon came an announcement that caused my Uncle Silas to put his elbow into Quincy's ribs, and made Foghorn begin to draw meditative hands slowly down his moustaches. "On the occasion of the celebration of the Jubilee of our dear Queen." There followed a good deal about homage and prayer, services and singing, solemn thanks and the ringing of bells. And then, "Of course, we shall indulge in secular celebration too. There is to be a tea fight and a torchlight procession, and, of course, a bonfire."
"You oughter seen old Foghorn's eyes light up," my Uncle Silas said. "It were worth being smoked out for."
After the service, the young parson came to shake hands with the converts to righteousness. "It has done my heart good. I cannot tell you how it has warmed me."
"Well, we'll try and warm you a bit more yet," Silas said. "We've learnt a lot today, ain't we, Foghorn?" "Too true," Foghorn said. "Too true."
On the night of the Jubilee, they lit the bonfire in the middle of the market square, about 8 o'clock. The square was packed with people, and that, as my Uncle Silas said,
"Helped us a lot. In a crowd like that, you hardly know t'other from which." Half of 'em a bit merry too. Course, he said, I ain't saying me and Foghorn and Quincy hadn't had a drop of neck oil, but then, after all, it were the Jubilee. The old gal had been on throne 5 minutes, and it were proper time for a bit of a warm-up.
But the most excited man on the square that night was not my Uncle Silas, or Foghorn Freeman, or Quincy. It was the young parson, carried away on ways of excessive and loyal zeal, not merely for his gracious sovereign the Queen, but for that roaring tower of spark and flame, lighting up the square and all the streets about the square. "Keep her going, Narrow!" he kept shouting. "Don't let her die down, you fellows. Keep the pot boiling. Splendid, Foghorn! That's a magnificent pile of faggots you have there. Pitch in!"
Well, my Uncle Silas said, we pitched in all good and proper. He kept raving for us to bring more wood for the fire. We kept a bringing on it. I reckon he must have had 2 wagon loads of faggots in the rectory garden. Well, after we got rid of them, a couple of old end places and half a pigsty.
"Pile on the agony!" the young parson kept shouting. "Pitch it on, you fellows! Pitch it on!" About 11 o'clock, they started bringing out the furniture.
Just a couple of old chairs and things. Nothing much. A couple of old couches and a table, Silas said. Well, me and Quincy kept bringing it out. Well, Foghorn looked after the parson's mate in one of the bedrooms.
That, it always seemed to me, was something much more in my Uncle Silas's line, but he, it appears, had something else to do. Soon he and Quincy were in another bedroom, rigging up the effigy.
First we got a couple of bolsters off the bed, and then we dressed it up, a nightshirt and every mite of Umbuggin palaver you could think of. I should think we put off 100 weight of bebs and cassocks and nightshirts and foley dolls on that thing. In the finish, there weren't another mite of popery left we could lay hands on.
In the other bedroom, Foghorn was all this time very successful in keeping the maid quiet, and the maid, it seemed, did not mind at all.
And then Quincy dropped it, Silas said. The pot, I mean. We had it on the parson's head, and Quincy dropped it, just as we were getting him down the stairs.
The pot was china, and up in the bedroom, the maid, hearing it crash downstairs, started screaming there were thieves about. But Foghorn, who was a good soldier of the Queen, my Uncle Silas said, with experience both at home and abroad, kept her quiet by telling her it was a cat with a milk jug.
Any rate, I found another, Silas said, a beauty, with roses on it, and we put it on the parson's head and took him out into the square. He must have looked just like one of them Umbuggin fancy church processions.
In the square, there was so much shouting and singing, so much spark and fire, so much excitement and jollity in the celebration for England, the Jubilee and the Queen, that the guy, with his load of vestments, was on the fire and in full flame before the young parson, all merriment suddenly extinguished, saw himself burning away in mockery.
Burn beautiful too,
my Uncle Silas used to say, in the dreamy, regretful way he kept for these occasions.
Burn beautiful, pot and all.
It was, I used to say to my Uncle Silas in due course, a very successful evening for everybody, not counting the parson, but on the whole, perhaps, a little drastic. His answer to this was quite pained.
They were drastic days, he said. Damn it, man, if you never like somebody, you Umbuggin well said so. You let 'em know. Bless me heart and life, everybody's getting too soft be'arth nowadays.
But the burning furniture, I used to say, burning a man's clothing, the very clothing and emblems of his calling, with a pot on his head. Not that I minded the pot so much, but the going was altogether a little rough, I thought, a little rough and rude. To answer which my Uncle Silas used to turn on me his one good eye, the other closed and bloodshot. and say with the bland mocked innocence, combined with a certain crooked sternness of his mouth, that he always kept for the finish of some taller tale.
"We enjoyed ourselves, didn't we? Damn it, man, what's wrong with enjoying ourselves? I enjoyed it.
Foghorn enjoyed it.
Quincy enjoyed it. The maid enjoyed it. I know she did, on account of well and all, because Foghorn told me so. Everyone enjoyed it."
"All except the parson?"
"Oh, yes, well, I know," Silas said. "But damn it, it were only a few bushels and old kitchen chairs and rags we burned. Don't forget, it ain't been so long since they'd have burnt him too. You ain't going to deny that now, are you?"
"No," I said. I wasn't going to deny that. But still, burning people out of house and home, that was a bit much, I thought. Perhaps a bit too much.
"Damn it, man," he said, "you're getting as bad as all the rest of 'em. I don't know what the nation's coming over everybody nowadays. Everybody's stopped enjoying theirselves. Everybody's getting too umbuggin soft by 'arf."
He fixed me with a stare of solemn tartness and disapproval, from which, for the life of me, I could not tell whether he was serious or not, until suddenly he dropped a wicked lid.
"It's about time you had a mouthful of wine," he said. "Get the bottle down."